Welcome, welcome. Happy International Women's Day, if you're with us live. This is being recorded on, let me get the date right, March 8th, 2023, and we have a wonderful event planned for today. This is a chance to showcase a few really special female founders who I'm connected to and share an important idea. I've been talking about it for so long, about using your voice and your wisdom really to create some positive change in the world. So if you don't know me, I'm Mindy Gibbins-Klein. I am founder of a few companies. I'm best known for being founder of a brand called The Book Midwife. And The Book Midwife, well, it's a metaphor. I'm not a real midwife. And the idea is a lot of people have a book inside and they just need some help getting it out. So that concept was born 21 years ago. And I think one of the people in this session was actually at our 20th anniversary party. So that will be, well, we're now into the next 20 years. What can I say? It's not just about books, though. And so 14 years ago, I launched The Thoughtful Leader. I launched it with a different name, but I wanted to share the fact that thought leadership is not just about books. And a book is not the only way to showcase yourself as a thought leader, or later, I started calling it thoughtful leader. So the purpose of today is to inspire you, if you're watching this, to do more with your great idea. If you have wisdom, if you have experience, if you have expertise, insights, to consider really pushing the boundaries and get your best, your biggest, your boldest ideas out there, especially if you are working on something, if you're championing a cause, if you believe in something and your mission has to do with empowering others, about creating change in society, and there's lots of areas in our society that need change, then you will be inspired by the speakers today. I've handpicked this group of special thought-leading women. I think I'm going to stop talking in a minute to showcase each one by one. But I just really want to encourage you to start today, take whatever notes you want to take from the speakers, and decide what you want to do for the rest of the year, because, well, and the rest of your career and the rest of your life, if you want. There's a lot of good that can be done. And the first step is taking a deep breath and deciding to jump in and do something positive. I must say, my voice has recovered from COVID, but it's still shaky because, I'm so excited to be with you. So if I sound breathless, it's because I am. And I also want to share with you something that only just arrived in the past hour. And this really brings home why I do the work I do. And it is a book, and I do have a bias towards books. This is particularly exciting because I was the one curating this book, and I brought 15 other women together to do it. And it's not launching today. It's launching on May 22nd, this book, but the first copy just arrived today, and just in time for International Women's Day. You like it? I love it. I really love how it's turned out. I wish you could feel it, but anyway, I need to get on with the panel. So what we're going to do today is hear from each person. If you have comments, put them in the chat. I probably won't see it until after, but we will aim to address those, and we'll have an interesting panel discussion, and we'll finish at the top of the hour. So that's enough of me talking. I would like to invite Suzanne to unmute first and share her big, bold idea and what she's up to in the world to use her voice for good and create positive change.
Well, hello, everybody. Mindy, thank you so much for inviting me to join the panel today. I feel truly honoured to be here on International Women's Day and in such esteemed company. So, yes, what do I do? I'm Suzanne Roynon. I am an interiors therapist and I work with feng shui. And to a lot of people, that might sound a little bit way out, a bit woo-woo. But let me just say to you that in every home, there is an energy. You've walked into places, I'm sure, and you've wanted to just walk straight back out again. I'm the person that goes in and makes those homes feel great. And it's not necessarily about changing the furniture around or anything like that. It is all about tuning into the energy, understanding what things are going on in that home and why it is holding people stuck in a place of sadness or the past, triggering memories and subconscious actions that they don't much like very much. So what do I do to use my voice for good? Well, the first thing I did a couple of years ago now, thank you, Mindy, for your amazing help with this, is I wrote this best-selling book, Welcome Home, How Stuff Makes or Breaks Your Relationship. And this was launched in COVID times, so we didn't get to do the fancy pants launch and drink champagne and, you know, whatever else one does with a book launch. Simply didn't happen. But even so, it went flying out there into the ether, thanks to the internet, and suddenly became a bestseller. And this little book is doing great things for women and men all around the world. So that was my first taste of getting my voice heard and doing good things, because the feedback I got was, oh my goodness, I followed the process, I did this stuff, and my life is so much better. And so that then grew and grew. As in addition to that first book, I have contributed to other books. I'm now an international #1 bestseller for another book that came out a couple of weeks ago. And I also teach, and I have lots of useful information that's downloadable for people on my website. So I'm getting my voice out there, and I now work internationally. So my clients are in Dubai, they're in New Mexico, they're Canada, the Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Europe, everywhere that has a home that doesn't feel quite comfortable, I can help. And I just think it is so wonderful that, you know, voices that need to be heard, people that need help with their homes, with the situation they're in, which all begins with the foundation of their home, can come to somebody like me and find somebody like me and can make that happen. And, you know, my why is to inspire others to align themselves with positive energy and live a life of success, abundance, and love. And I think that's a pretty good place to be every day, not just International Women's Day, but every single day. So, Mindy, thank you again for inviting me. Again, this is my lovely book, Welcome Home, How Stuff Makes or Breaks Your Relationship, born with the help of Mindy, and out there growing in the world and making homes a happier place all around the globe. Happy International Women's Day, folks.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. It was a pleasure hearing how you present yourself and your wonderful mission and your work. And obviously, the listeners and viewers can touch base with you and all the speakers anytime after we finish this live broadcast. So thank you for being the first guest to go. The next person who I'm excited to bring onto the stage is Suzanne. Suzanne.
Hello, everybody. I'm Suzanne Heaton-Wright, and I'm the founder of Superstar Communicator. The reason why I created this methodology was because that I was aware of many incredible people who are not presenting the best version of themselves, so they're overlooked. Maybe they're ignored. Perhaps they are not valued enough. We all know people like that, and certainly in my case, when I was younger, I realized that I was that person. I always tell the story of my form mistress who only died a couple of weeks ago. There was a tribute to her in the Telegraph. Recollections differ, but she didn't allow me to apply to university. I got a form elsewhere and applied, and she never spoke to me when I went to university. But Looking back as an adult, I realise that I didn't present the best version of myself, which would give her the confidence that I would do sufficiently well to get to a top university. And I see this with many, many people, men as well as women, that they need some support and some tools and techniques so that they really can be part of any business conversation, whether it's a meeting, a presentation, a pitch, sharing ideas. They don't need to be the loudest person in the room, but to be able to speak with clarity and confidence and credibility. Now, this year's International Women's Day theme is Embrace Equity. And one of the things that I've been doing with a number of virtual talks, every single one is virtual this year again, is that I've been asking the attendees, who are men, allies, as well as women, what we can do to embrace equity. What can we do to lift other women up? And I feel that this is a good time to mention a couple of ways that we could do this. So often we are asked to recommend perhaps an expert or a speaker or an author or a podcast guest. And the default is men. You look down the list and it's all men, and they are fantastic people who are being recommended. I ask everybody to consciously think of a woman that you could recommend, because then that will help us as women to elevate each other. Also in meetings and, online, a lot of things are posts, making sure that you back up what other women say by saying, yeah, Mindy had something really good to say on that. And finally, why don't we elevate other women by recruiting them, by helping them to move up the career ladder, because that is pure equity. And it's also superstar communicator, because those people are presenting the best version of themselves so that they are awesome. Thank you for listening.
That's just amazing. Susan, thank you very much for being part of this event. And yes, we will be discussing equity, embracing equity, and I think building on your ideas when we have our panel. So thank you so much for sharing that. I am going to ask Diana now to come online.
There we go, unmuted. Hello, and welcome to the call to everybody who's watching and listening, whether live or later on. And I also have a big thank you to Mindy, because this is my book. It may be mirrored, actually, which came out as mirrored to me, okay, which came out in 2014, so quite some time ago now. Post-traumatic success, how to use traumatic events in your life to live your true purpose. And I would say I'd known Mindy for some years before the book came out, and Mindy kept saying, when are you going to write it? When are you going to write it? I think this book was inside me. The title was inside me for about 20 years. So that was some pregnancy. Thankfully, my real ones didn't last quite that long. And the book was inside me for that length of time, because I guess, like most of us who reach adulthood, nobody gets here unscathed, do they? We've usually been through something in our lives, whether it's in our childhood or early adulthood. In my case, the traumatic event was being diagnosed with breast cancer for the first time at the age of 32, when all my friends were having babies and talking about, sort of the rest of their lives. And I was going through breast cancer treatment. Now, I was 32 quite a long time ago. In fact, before the days of the internet. So there was no means of going online, finding information, finding other people. So at the time, I didn't know of anybody else of my age, or indeed anybody who had survived breast cancer. I knew nobody who had survived. I knew a few of my mum's friends who hadn't. But I kind of sort of had this thing inside me that this isn't going to get me. I can't explain why, but I just have a belief that this isn't the end. I don't see this as the end, and thankfully it wasn't. So I'm still here. Nearly lived half my life since my first breast cancer, as I had done before. And I thought, you know, I do have to use this. That there's a reason I'm still here. You know, the bearded man upstairs hasn't just forgotten about me and thought you'd gone years ago. And I did always have this belief inside me that I had to do something. I just didn't know what the art of the possible was, really. I spoke to my breast care nurse shortly after I'd finished my treatment and said, what can I do? What can I do? And she kept saying, you're not ready. I'll tell you when you're ready. and actually, she linked me up with breast cancer care 2 years later. You have to be 2 years post-diagnosis. And that was really, I would say, the start of my journey of using my voice for good. So I've now been a volunteer with breast cancer care for, it will be, I guess, 28 years. I'm into my 30th year since that time, since that breast cancer. Been a volunteer with breast cancer care for 28 years. And over that time, I've done many things. All of them have been using my voice, quite literally, from modeling clothes, from going into organizations, from doing talks, collecting checks from groups of brownies who'd raised money, all sorts of things. And most importantly, peer support, which I think is the most important thing. Just helping somebody right here, right now, who's either had a diagnosis or their mother's had a diagnosis or their partner. And actually that's, you know, that is the most important thing, because that's so immediate, and you can help somebody right here, right now. Of course, now we have the internet and all of these things are much easier, and it's much easier to find information and to help more people. So that's one of the things that I do. I think one of the other things that I do, I've worked over the years with entrepreneurial women. I ran Damsels in Success for 6 years, which I loved doing. It still kind of felt quite small scale in comparison to what I spend most of my time doing now, which is management development. So I set up a company with 3 colleagues back in 2004. So we've been going quite a long time. The other 3 have retired. You know, I was the youngest, so I'm still around. And actually, I love what we do. We're really, really, really crystallizing. I think we had a conversation, the 5 of us, just recently, and we said, what is it? You know, what is it about what we do that gets us out of bed in the mornings? Because, you know, there are other people who do the same thing. And one of my colleagues said, do you know what it is? We want to really make sure that nobody ever leaves an organization because of a shit manager. Excuse the language. That was what he said. Sorry about the language, but you know, we don't want anybody to leave an organization because of a poor manager. And I guess, you know, a bit like the sort of having gone through traumatic events, those of us who have worked in the corporate world, whether we've been there ourselves, you know, we've certainly seen these sorts of things happen. Managers who are maybe out of their depth, just not knowing which way is up, and we help them. It feels great. So thank you, Mindy. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wow, thank you for sharing that very personal story with us. And, you know, we all have so much to share. I saw a post on LinkedIn that was featuring Suzanne earlier, and I just saw one of the comments said that there's even more that wasn't shared. I mean, we can never really share all of ourselves, but we do our best. Anyway, thank you very much. I should be the one thanking you. So I have a bit more to share to wrap this up after we have our last 2 featured speakers. Please unmute Hattie and share what you're up to and how you use your voice for good.
Hello, thanks Mindy for inviting me to this. Happy International Women's Day to everybody. Before we go any further, I'm going to show you my book, which is called The Joy of Plumbing. Now, I was a primary school teacher and jacked it in to change my life completely and become a plumber in 1990. I worked for about 17 years, 16 to 17 years, and I never met a single other woman plumber. And I started to think that I needed to do something, because I used to teach a primary school. So what I was always into gaining independence, and I wanted to bring out the fullest potential in the children I taught. And I wanted to bring out the fullest potential in myself and everybody that came in contact with me. And so when I realized that I suddenly just one day thought, hold on a minute, I haven't met a single other woman who does this job. Now, my plumbing career went from doing 1 day a week in college, employing myself because nobody would give me a job, and buying secondhand tools, blagging my way into advertising, and just basically I went into a magazine company and I said to them, do you need any plumbing? And they said, yes. I said, so I'll do your plumbing if you put an advert in. And that was how I got my first advert. And because for me, going back was not an option. I always wanted to move forward. But and every house I went into, I can fully understand what you were saying, Suzanne, about going into homes. And I was certainly catching a lot of the bad energy that was in a lot of homes. And I, in fact, developed ways to protect myself before going into homes. Not before I'd suffered, I've got to tell you. But so when I discovered I kind of just thought about it, that I haven't seen single other woman. I decided that I needed to look outside of my own little life. My business was successful. I had loads of fantastic customers, an order book going for months in advance. And I started on my entrepreneurial journey because I realized that I was more than a plumber. I was actually an entrepreneur. And so I started hanging out with entrepreneurs. And in 2010, I was introduced to Mindy, and 2011 we launched the book. And it's basically not about plumbing. It's about the way I used self-employment to get myself to get the life that I wanted, to be self-directed, to be independent. And I really realized how empowering it was to do a trade. And ever since I started thinking about other women, one of the things I really realized is that we weren't visible. No, whenever I'd go into homes, in fact, I'm off the tools now, but I did some work for somebody just because they were local and they needed it. So I went down there, and I'm still being told, oh, I didn't know women did that. As I've been doing it I'd been in the business 33 years, and people still didn't know that women were plumbers. And so back in 2017, when I started to look at how I could expand, internet was just about to, go crazy. Facebook, social media was about to come full force, really. Not in 2017, sorry, in 2006. 17 was when I started the franchise of Stopcocks. When I started in 2010, I started helping other women to become plumbers, self-employed plumbers. We've moved leaps and bounds since then, but there is still only 1% of women who are plumbers. And I talk to companies all the time, and I talk to businesses, and we run an event every year that bring women together. I use my voice every day, particularly on this day. I'll be talking to many other people after this about how we can help. We need to big up other women, as you were saying, Susan. We really need to support other women. And one of the things, before I run out of time, and I know I have, is just to say that the next thing we're doing is we're actually creating, and this might be something that anybody who's watching would be interested in, the Stopcocks DIY Club, Women's DIY Club. There'll be ways I can tell you how to join it. It's free to join. And basically, whatever you want to know, we'll teach you. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. And Hattie, I don't know why your Zoom name doesn't include your MBE, but yeah, right. Please change that every time you go online, because it's not everybody who gets recognized by the Queen and now the King. This is your service to the UK, but I think to women worldwide. Thank you for everything that you've done and continue to do. Oh my goodness. And now we are going to jump across the continent somewhat to Zurich in Switzerland. And Jane, please introduce yourself and what you're up to in the world.
Oh, thank you. Wow, what an act to follow, all these wonderful ladies. And yes, hats off to Hattie. I'm sure she's probably heard that weak pun before. And all these fabulous ladies. It's great to join you all here. And to everyone watching, happy International Women's Day. And it's all about embracing equity. I think it's a really good theme that you brought up, Mindy, about using our voice for good. And there are so many different ways that we want to make change in the world. Mine is about work and workplaces, because, I mean, we spend a third of our time at work, but it seems like work models of working, you know, are struggling to keep up with some of the issues about how we manage, which allow equal representation of women and men in the workplace. And, you know, we were making tiny little steps forward, 215 to 219. You know, the numbers of women in senior positions were slowly increasing. But over the pandemic, we came up with this big issue that so many women were taking on the second shift. They ended up with homeschooling, they ended up with all the childcare, looking after elderly parents, all these sorts of things that we've actually sadly seen things starting to go back in the corporate world and the numbers actually dropping. So, you know, my purpose in life is to try and make workplaces work, make them, I say, workplaces fit for human consumption. And I don't think some of the ideas I have are actually unique to women, but I think they would make workplaces better for everyone. And part of that is really coming back that we've seen that we can work flexibly. And now everybody wants to seem to rush back into the office again. And we get back into those challenges of childcare and the lack of flexibility, long commutes, all these sorts of things. So my simple message for today is let's not go backwards. There's fantastic examples that we've just seen today of women who are out there trailblazing. And it's so sad to see that we've taken a few little inches back, but let's make the next ones jumping meters forward in how we look at our workplaces. And yeah, so that's about really embracing the equity, the diversity, but I don't think it's a change that necessarily needs to be for women. And yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for us to get our voices out there today and make an action. I saw, as we see on today, all these little memes and things like that. And the one was said, I don't need empowerment, I need equal pay. Very bold statement, but yes, I mean, we've been talking about some of these things for a very long time. And so, yes, and I guess it's been a little bit, one of Mindy's authors as well, and let me share also my book here, Focus on the Age of Distraction. Hold it up. Oh, sorry, there we go. And it talks about workplaces pre the pandemic and how we can make them better for everyone. And really, because as I said, a third of our lives at work, and I like work to be fun. Obviously, diverse, inclusive, equitable, but at the most, they should be fun places to work.
Thank you so much, Jane. Really appreciate your coming on and joining this panel. Wow, 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 wow. I hope if you've been watching at home or at your desk, you're more than inspired. You're sort of itching to get out there and implement some of these ideas and follow up. And speaking of follow, please follow all of our speakers because we need to support each other. And, you know, there's some great posts every day from these speakers and more. And, you know, I'm aiming to post more relevant stuff and more thoughtful content. So as founder of The Thoughtful Leader, I just wanted to bring in one comment about equity. And I think this is the first thing that we will discuss here as a group. The definition of equity, not the financial kind, the definition of equity as opposed to equality is recognizing that people are starting in different places. So, you know, we can't have equality, complete equality, because we're not created equal, but to be equitable and fair, we not only need to recognize that people are in different situations and different places, so we also need to figure out what we can do to level the playing field. And that is one of the things that is absolutely a passion of mine. So when I ran the publishing company that so many of our speakers published with, I saw that the bookshelves did not represent our society. And I began to think about that, and that really bothered me. And in 2019, I set up the 80% initiative, not just for the publishing company, also for all my companies. And the 80% initiative stated that we were going to put our money and our time and effort to create opportunities for people who are in underrepresented groups, as the best way to describe it. So that's, you may have seen this in my posts, women, people of color, disabled people and people of different abilities, people in different economic situations and socioeconomic situations, people from the LGBTQ plus community, any marginalized and underrepresented group, to give them more opportunities. So to take 80% of our list and dedicate it to authors from those groups. And I can tell you it wasn't that easy because, and this was our strapline, left to chance, some people don't get a chance. And left to chance, some people don't take a chance. And you know why? Because we've heard it. If you don't see it, you can't be it. I don't happen to think that's true. I think all the trailblazers in history couldn't see it, and yet they did it anyway. But for us to create equity, this is the question for the panel. How can we have an approach where we go above and beyond, where we have a disproportionate amount of time, effort, or money to level the playing field? How is that done? And so whoever wants to answer that first, just stick a real hand up or a virtual hand. Hattie, please.
Okay, now I work exclusively with women. That doesn't mean I only ever haven't come in contact with women, obviously. And I believe everybody is correct in what they're saying, that if we make things better for women, we actually make things better for everybody. And that's why I believe that we should, our company, Stop Cox, initially it was Stop Cox Women Plumbers, but now it's Stop Cox Group because it incorporates consultancy and a whole load of other things to do with making the picture, a whole ecosystem. So to address that thing about equity, I'm always being told, well, women don't want to do that. Women don't want to be plumbers. They don't want to come into the trades. And the reason why they don't want to come into the trades is because no one's inviting them. Yeah. And because of this, there is no equity. And so I work on a daily basis to try and create that equity. And in fact, I'm doing a talk at the end of the month, and it's called, using my voice for good actually, but it's called, I've called it Girls Don't Do What? And that's what I've called it, because I've been all my life been told girls don't do that, because we don't come from the same place, obviously. And in college, I was told that we were all going to be treated equally. But basically what that meant was we were all going to be treated the same. And the same meant the worst lad in the class, because obviously I was older than them all and they were all lads when I went to college. So it was an early form of equal opportunities, but it wasn't equal whatsoever. And I'm really happy that it's talking about embracing equity, and that we always need to start from where we're at. And that's how we can create equity. So you've got to take it into account what people's needs are. Don't just say, I want to get more women into my company. How are you going to keep them? Don't just say it, do it.
Great. Thank you very, very much. And yes, pay attention to where people are at, said in a lovely American phrasing, which I like. Thanks for that. So I saw Susan and then Jane. So Susan, your comment on this.
I think this is really interesting, particularly what you said, Mindy, that despite the fact you have this pledge for 80% underrepresented groups, this wasn't being taken up. And I believe in the art of possibility, that sometimes we need to nudge people, that we need to say to somebody, do you know, I can see that you are brilliant at this. Why don't you have a go? Or in the case of me, one of my pledges every year is that I reach out to 3 women and encourage them to apply for awards, or I will apply on their behalf. Not everybody takes me up on it. They, oh no, I can't do that. But I have given them the seed that they could think that. And I'm sure that every single one of us has had situations where people have done that for us. And it has opened a door. It's given us a vision to something different. Maybe that's part of Embrace Equity.
Wow, thank you. And I love the practical ideas. I do think that if our viewers and listeners could keep a little list of specific practical actions and just do those things to begin with, they'll see that start to work. And I know this from experience. When I actually go and do something, it tends to come back to me and it sparks off other ideas and other collaborators. And, you know, that's really why we're here. And the 6 of us, if I can say it, we're pioneers. We are the types of people who have stepped out of our comfort zone, out into the world, and we're here for a reason. So we're using our voice for good. And if we are bringing more women and anybody onto the journey, I think that's fantastic. So thank you for sharing some specific ideas. Jane, you've been very patient.
Oh, thank you, which is not like me. So, I mean, I think the interesting thing when we talk about equity and equality is the equity gets sometimes into this debate about quotas and numbers and things like that in the corporate environment. And there is a concern that you are favouring a group which is currently underrepresented, and that somehow offends people, usually because it's what I call it's not in my backyard. People might grasp it at a intellectual level. We need to get more women on boards, let's have a quota. We need to get more of this particular group, let's up the representation. But when it happens to them, when they miss out on a job or somebody they love misses out on a place in medical school because, you know, there was a quota for people of different groups, they suddenly lose interest. So it comes to the not in my backyard, and we get a lot of arguments in these ways against it. And that I appreciate is difficult in a community, in a society where we have to make rules, regulations, ways forward. Otherwise, we don't make progress. And it all seems fine at the big level, but how do you deal with it at an individual level? And then I think that we can make change sometimes by pushing it a little bit. And while I feel sympathy and I appreciate that it can be difficult at times if you think you were the victim of somebody not being able to get somewhere, you can only think that a lot of the times you had the privilege to be able to get to where you are today without needing the help that somebody else might need or the support to be able to get somewhere.
Yeah, thanks so much. I totally agree. And when I launched the 80% initiative, I had a lot of support. We got a lot of press. I was invited to speak in New York. I had some fantastic opportunities to discuss this intelligently with intelligent people. And then I had some trolls who came onto the blog and said things like, what about us middle-aged white men? Now, my little joke is, I love middle-aged white men, well, my husband at least, but we're here for everybody. But I kind of got riled up and said, well, you've had opportunities for the past 200 plus years. How about giving someone else a chance? Not sure that really landed well, but it is difficult. It is tricky. And, at the Thoughtful Leader, we say, be bold and opinionated, yet respectful. And that's the balance that I'm always trying to achieve. And that is, just putting that extra thought into how we're saying things and how are we welcoming people? Are we inviting them, or are we pushing, trying to push our message across and creating friction? I'm going to call on Diana, whose hand was up, and then Hattie, I think, has another word. Diana? Unmute. I don't think I can.
There we go.
There you go.
That's fine. That's it. Actually, Mindy, you've just reminded me of a thing that happened many, many years ago when I was shaking a tin for breast cancer care, and a middle-aged man got very angry with me, came up to me and said, "Why aren't you raising money for prostate cancer?" And obviously I was a bit less confident probably than I am now, and I just said, "I'm really sorry, I haven't had prostate cancer. I don't, if somebody came and asked me for advice, I wouldn't know where to start." And actually that started a conversation. I said, "So why don't you?" Though I don't think the prostate cancer charity even existed then, but but I just kind of thought, that's kind of a strange question. I haven't had prostate cancer. Why would I? Anyway, that you just reminded me when you said that.
Oh, you've just reminded me how much fun you are and how funny. And if our viewers hadn't already decided to follow you, Diana Barden, do it now. She is full of these stories that will just make your day. I don't know how you do it, but you always find the humorous and make me smile. So thank you for your gifts, but that's a particular gift we don't know if we all have, but yeah.
I think I've just been on the planet a long time. Just lots of stuff has happened. One of the stories I was going to tell you, which we laughed at the time, and we shouldn't have done, but she laughed too, was in my the basic training, the very first bit of training I did with breast cancer care, and it was the afternoon of having a table full of prostheses. If you've never seen one, they look like fish. Oh, actually, they look like chicken breasts. Anyway, they look kind of weird, and the whole table full looks even weirder. All these pink things all over the table. And we went to have a tea break, and we came back in, and we were sort of looking and feeling in different shapes and all this stuff. And one of the women on the training was a woman of color, and these things are called natural color. And she just said, "They're not natural to me. They're not my color." And she laughed and said, yeah, right, like they could ever make them black or brown or any other color. Of course they do now, but back then it just seemed so ridiculous that they weren't, and yet they were called natural. And I've known other women who've had the same issue with tights. You have to wear natural colored, flesh colored tights. Well, that's not the color of my flesh.
Right.
So
and
weird.
Foundation, makeup, and yes.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that.
I was the point I was going to make, and people who know me know that this is sort of my middle name. Actually, when we talk about equity, it's about going around to the other side of the table and looking and understanding what the world looks like from the other side of the table, because it's always different. I know on Zoom it's the same, you can see this, and so can I, but actually if I'm looking at you in a room, I see your background, you see mine, and the world is different. If I'm talking about a world where the windows are on the left and from your side of the table they're on the right, it's like, what planet are you on? We don't even inhabit the same planet.
That is phenomenal. Another very specific piece of advice, and step into someone else's moccasins. That's easily said and easily done if we remember. So thank you very much for sharing that. Hattie, did you have another comment on this?
Yeah, I was just going to say that because we work with women to bring them into the trades, obviously, and we're only 1%. So we've got 99% of the industry is men. So they're constantly saying to us, "What are you doing for men?" And we say to them, "Look, we try to have this imagery of a balance. Okay, at the minute it's like that. This is the men's side. This is the women's side. So if you're going to be equal and you put a pebble there, it's not going to make any difference to the balance. So you actually need to come over this side and increase what's on this side so that you start to get a balance. And then at that point, we can start calling ourselves plumbers, electricians. We don't have to say we are women plumbers or women electricians, because we've got a balance, because we're always being told, why can't we just be called plumbers? And I always say to people, it's because if you ask any child to draw a plumber, they will always draw a man. And when children in equal numbers or even higher percentages start sometimes drawing women, then we know we're getting somewhere. So that's the way I kind of try to explain it.
Very visual, and just picturing a picture, which I'm now doing. That's very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Suzanne, did you have a comment on this? Because I was going to ask you a different question, but
well, I'm very happy to answer as many questions as you like. However, what I wanted to sort of throw into the mix as the mother of a disabled child, a disabled daughter, as it turns out, is that I think there are parents who will wrap their disabled child in cotton wool and believe that their world is limited to the world that their parents can accept, provide, acknowledge and understand. And that's something that with my daughter, who is very deaf, I wasn't willing to do. And I knew right from the start she was a smart kid. I wanted her to be able to go to university. Yes, she needed extra support to go to university, but she came out of there with a first-class honours degree. And she now works in a very, very fine company in the city, and she does amazing things. She's also worked for the Wall Street Journal in New York. You know, she got out there and she believed, you know, that whole thing. She believed she could, and she did. And she believed she could because the women around her, her mom, her aunts, her grandmother, her friends' parents, all said, it doesn't matter that you're disabled, you can do this. Now, I then went and I worked for a little while in a charity for quite disabled people. And these are amazing, amazing families. But the ones who would actually push their children forward to accomplish, to do things, were very few, because they are so protected, you know, with whether they have a nanny state, or, you know, don't allow your child out of the door because you don't know who is out there. Well, the fact is, it doesn't matter who you are. You cannot accomplish what you can potentially accomplish if you're not prepared to put your toe out of the door and start making a difference. And I think it's beholden on all of us as parents, as women, as representatives of a minority, that we encourage people in every way we can. If you've got a dream, if you've got a desire, if you just believe that you would like to walk to the end of the road without somebody worrying that you're going to fall over, then you encourage them to get out and do that. Because until we are actively encouraging, it's not going to change for so many people, because the people closest to them are holding on to the reins too tightly.
Mic drop. Encouragement, it's one of my key words. I like to see myself as one of life's encouragers. I don't know how the panel participants see me or our viewers, but, you know, as long as I have that intention, then I will keep putting myself forward and putting myself in positions where I can support and encourage others. And of course, if you like working with words like I do, encourage means helping someone with their courage, but of course, at the root, it really has to do with the heart. And it's tapping into the heart and going where your heart wants to go. So this is the question I was going to ask you, of course, the heart-based question to our relationship coach and feng shui and interiors expert. But I'm going to now ask it to everybody, since you've paved the way. So to follow your heart in this day and age, if it's something that is a bit disruptive, and if you're paving the way for others, how do you strike the balance to bring people with you? Because I must admit, some of the ways I like to follow my heart, I'm not sure how many people will be following me. And should I care? You know, that is something that I play with every day, not to say wrestle with. I pretty much follow my heart and I do me. So who has a thought on this? We have 10 minutes left, and I'd love just a short comment about following your heart and bringing others with you. And then I guess somehow creating the vision that is your vision, but also could be their vision. Does that make sense? And if it does, stick a hand up, and Diana, you'll go first.
A thought that I just have on that is, I think if we're wanting people to follow us, we have to go first. By definition, we have to go first. And there's always that thing, isn't there? Some will, some won't. You know, we're not going to be, the word disruptor suggests that some people are going to feel so disrupted by you that they are not going to follow. And that's okay. Probably, you know, don't want them along necessarily. So I don't think it's ever the case that everybody will follow, but I do think we have to go there first and almost show the way, you know, show that it's okay here if you want to follow me. And if you don't, that's okay too.
Yep. Well, I would just like to jump on the back of that because you picked up on the word disruptor. And I actually brought out a multi-author book called Success Secrets of Disruptors. And the funny thing was, not when you're gonna not be surprised to hear this, not many women stepped up to be part of that. And I think, considering it's International Women's Day, if anybody would like to address the fact that a woman who's disrupting might be seen as disruptive compared to a man who's disrupting the status quo, feel free to answer that, as well as the following your heart question. Jane. Unmute, please.
Yep. Yes. So thought there that, I mean, but as Diana said, you can't be everything to everyone. But if we don't get our voice out there, then no change happens either. So there's a bit where saying, as you said earlier, some of the things that you will say will offend some people who hold a particular point of view. And if you end up being so wishy-washy about it, vanilla, you know, you're not the flavor that they'll pick. When your second question, sorry, just remind me again, was around
how women disrupt compared to men, or how we're perceived when we do disruption.
Because when you break the role models, I mean, I remember very much in a business environment one time, there was nothing wrong with sitting in the boardroom and waving their finger and talking like this. I mean, I really remember having that feeling, deciding I would do that back because I was so annoyed at this man who sat, you know, with a big open posture waving. I was going to do exactly the same back to him. I mean, they are just absolutely shocked at that sort of thing. And there is a bit where, yes, what we might consider being assertive, coming across as a woman, is considered aggressive. However, if we realize that and sometimes use it for effect, and still get our voice out there, because if we're not setting the scene and making changes, I mean, so many times I was the only woman in the boardroom, and if I sat and waited my turn and didn't interrupt and, you know, I would never have been heard. So it required a bit. Certainly didn't require I acted like a big man and did that all the time, but every now and then, once in my career, it played for a good effect.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm going to call on Susan, even though she hasn't yet put her hand up. I know you're working with this every single day, how to get your voice heard and get your message heard without being seen as a whatever. Oh, I'll unmute you.
I think someone else has unmuted me. It's really, really interesting because there are so many stereotypes around that, aren't there? And our particular roles, we aren't expected to disrupt in the same way. And there was one writer who wrote a book, The Authority Gap, Mary Ann Seacart, which I highly recommend. Sorry, she didn't go through your stable, but she discusses the fact that women at the same level as men are not respected or trusted as highly as men, even though they might have the same experience and expertise. One thing that is really good to do is, if you are being disruptive, if you have an opinion that's right out there, to back it up with data or evidence. And then you can whip it out of your back pocket if there are any objections to that, to back it all up.
Lovely. Another very specific and practical tip. Thank you so much. Suzanne, I see your hand.
So all of these things that are being said, I'm sitting here and allowing them to wash into me and just thinking, oh my gosh, there's so much I don't know. Isn't that the thing? When you get a little bit older, you know not how much you already know, but how much you don't. But I am doing some disrupting on a much smaller scale. But when I'm working with people who are in the throes of divorce, women primarily, because they are the ones astute enough to recognize that their homes are reflecting what's going on in their lives. But one of the things that I talk about with those women is considering not holding on to the marital home. And that is incredibly disruptive, not so much to the women who, when they actually think about the implications of what they're doing by staying there, they kind of go, yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense. But for the men, the people that they are divorcing, who have learned to use the wife's desperation to fight to keep the marital home, they've been using that as a tool to get more in terms of the ultimate outcome from a divorce, keeping different accounts, pensions, whatever. They've learned, and their solicitors have learned, that the family home is a massive bargaining tool. And that when women I'm working with, and I also work with some solicitors as well who might follow a similar process, is just like, okay, if I just remove this bargaining tool from you, what happens? And it's like the men's world comes crashing down around them because they haven't got that way of manipulating anymore. They lose control. So it's a small scale disruption, but one I'm very proud to do, and works very successfully. So
My gosh. Thank you very much for sharing that vivid story. Oh, we welcome animals as well on these podcasts. So I was going to call on Hattie. We are coming up to the last minute. So what I'm going to do is ask every one of the panelists to summarize how we follow our hearts and bring others with us, which, I think we have so many things to cover, but your best tip in 15 seconds, starting with Hattie, because you have disrupted that.
My best tip is find a mentor. You're not the only one. You won't be the only one. Find somebody who feels the same as you, has the same dream as you. Look for them because they exist. In my world, it's me.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. Jane?
Look for good role models, a bit like the mentors, but follow good role models. There's so many misconceptions. We're fed with stories from Cinderella to Snow White of little women sitting at home doing the right thing. Find bold, energetic women to be your role models and heroes to your daughters, like Amelia Earhart, people like that, and Mindy.
Thank you.
Lovely ladies.
And all of us, yes. Everybody.
All of us lovely ladies on the call here.
Thank you. Susan, quick tip.
I would agree with that. Pick some role models that you can identify with and step forward. But likewise, you walk the talk so that you're a role model for other people too.
Brilliant. Diana.
For me, just to make it a bit different, for me, it's about connection, and connecting with people, I'll just say again, is going round to their side of the table. learning their language and being curious. Yeah, being creatively curious.
Fantastic, great words. Suzanne.
Believe in yourself and show up, because you're not going to change a thing until you actually get there and start doing it.
Wow, I suppose I should offer a tip. So what we say at the Thoughtful Leader is push your thinking, and push is a masculine word, but that's how things get done. So don't stop at the obvious. Really push yourself to think, well, what else and how else? And how could I make this better and bigger, if you like? So I made this bigger because I was just going to talk for an hour. And I thought, Mindy, nobody necessarily wants to hear you talking for an hour. So I thought 6 of us might be more interesting. I think it was. If you enjoyed this, please share, please reshare, post, comment. Please follow all the speakers here. And there will be more where this came from, because this is one of the ways that I'm pushing myself and pushing my thinking. And, you know, I'm meant to be doing more video. And so I'm going to be bringing lots of fun people with me. So watch this space, and happy International Women's Day. Thanks to all my guests.